Samyang have recently updated their popular 35mm f1.4 prime lens, but is it better than the god tier Sony 35mm f1.4 G Master? Well, as always, today we're going to find out. The new Samyang is both larger and heavier than the Sony G Master, though despite this, they both feel very nicely balanced on the front of my Sony a7 Mark IV. Both lenses include a dust and weather seal construction, though the cheaper Samyang is made predominantly from plastic, whilst the G Master is mainly built from metal, making it feel slightly more solid in the hand. On the lens barrel, the Samyang features a customizable AF lock button and a customizable switch. By default, when this switch is set to mode 1, the lens will just function as you would expect. But when set to mode 2, the focus ring will now allow you to adjust the aperture value instead. I should mention that further customization can be made to this lens with future firmware updates, though you will first need to purchase Samyang's lens dock. The G Master includes an MF to AF switch, a customizable button, as well as a declickable manual aperture ring. As for price, it will probably be no surprise to you to hear that the Samyang is significantly cheaper than the premium G Master glass. In fact, it's almost half the price, so that means that the Samyang obviously is going to pick up the first point in this competition. Although a case could be made for the G Master being the better built lens of the two, the Samyang is still very nicely put together and it feels kind of wrong to deny it a point, so therefore I'm going to give both of these lenses a point for build. As for handling, again, both of these lenses are just a joy to use, so both of them deserve a point here too. When it comes to autofocus, both of these lenses are rapid to focus with absolutely no signs of hunting. In low light conditions, although both of these lenses slowed ever so slightly and did take a little bit longer to lock on, they still managed to find their target and neither of them showed any signs of hunting. When shooting wide open in high-speed continuous mode, almost all of the shots I took with both of these lenses were sharp and in focus, so overall a pretty impressive performance across the board. With both lenses putting in a solid performance in this round, I think both deserve another point. Switching over to video mode, and when shooting a moving target, both lenses managed to keep locked onto George as he walked towards the camera at a regular pace. When repeating the test at a faster pace, again both lenses tracked George with absolutely no issues at all. As for AF noise, both of these lenses are absolutely whisper quiet. In manual focus mode, both lenses have a nice smooth rotation, though the Samyang does have a very slight delay to it and a noticeably longer throw. And this means that of the two lenses, I personally preferred using the G Master. The good news is, however, that the Samyang doesn't suffer from much focus breathing at all, whilst the Sony G Master is notorious for having terrible amounts of breathing. But either way, with both of these lenses putting in yet another top tier performance, it's points all around. In our Bokeh balls test, the Samyang actually produces slightly better results at the centre, with near perfectly spherical balls compared to the GM's slightly squashed orbs. However, at the corners, both of these lenses create cat's-eye shaped balls, which isn't ideal. There is a noticeable halo effect on the Samyang results, which may be a turn-off for bokeh fanatics. In terms of general bokeh quality, although both lenses create a nice thick blur when shooting at f1.4, for me the Sony wins hands down in this round, as the bokeh it creates is noticeably smoother and less textured when compared side by side with the Samyang's results. And because of this, the point in this round goes to the Sony. To my surprise, the cheaper Samyang actually deals with flaring slightly better than the G Master, with less ghosting visible in the test results. On a longitudinal chromatic aberration test, both sets of results are pretty clean, though there is a hint of coloured fringing on the charts, with the Samyang results displaying teal at the top and amber at the bottom, whilst the Sony G Master features a mild amount of green fringing at the top and magenta fringing below the area of sharp focus. Though when shooting with these lenses out in the real world, it really was hard to find anything to complain about. Both of them are quick and reliable in terms of focus, which meant that I had tons of images to choose from when editing up in Lightroom. Though, as we've kind of already touched on, the biggest difference between these lenses is with the bokeh. In some situations, that haloing effect created by the Samyang was just a bit too messy and distracting for my liking, and if I was pushed to pick a favourite at this point, I would definitely be swayed more towards the G Master. Though that said, in terms of overall sharpness, when shooting wide open at f1.4, it really is hard to tell these results apart, as they both appear to capture razor sharp results every single time. So when looking at the test charts, you can see that the Samyang suffers a bit from barrel distortion at the corners of the frame, with the GM results looking almost entirely distortion free. Though when we zoom into the center in terms of sharpness and contrast, the results are practically identical. At the corners, the G Master remains nice and sharp, whilst the Samyang does start to soften a little bit, and there's also a touch of chromatic aberration, but really not a horrific result. The G Master does have the slight benefit of being able to focus marginally closer than the Samyang, but in terms of sharpness at this distance, the Samyang is only very marginally softer than the G Master, which is pretty impressive. So when it comes to handing out points in this final round for image quality, honestly, the results are just way too close to call an overall winner, so I think both of these lenses deserve a point apiece. And this means that after tallying up all of the scores, this head-to-head contest has resulted in a draw. So, which of these lenses should you buy? Well, to me, it's pretty simple, really. If you want a 35mm that offers the pinnacle of image quality and the best looking bokeh by far, and you also don't mind selling your left kidney in order to afford it, then the Sony G Master is the best option of these two. However, if you can get past the fact that your bokeh is going to look like a puckered little arsehole in the background, then for your money, the Samyang is absolutely razor sharp and a total steal in comparison to the G Master, possibly making it the best budget 35mm option currently available for Sony cameras.